Hello and welcome back to another episode of Texas Nation. I'm your host, Grant Levenson, and I'm back. We have a great show for you today, and we're going to have a special interview with Texas State's ace pitcher, Carson Smith, and also our new rapid fire segment, and of course, a roundtable discussion that you won't want to miss. But before we get into it, let's recap this last week in sports. There's nothing worse than losing your star player, but losing his wingman isn't great. BYU 6'9" forward Brandon Davies has been dismissed from the newly ranked number 3 Cougars. It's been released that he had sexual relations with his girlfriend. Now I know that the Cougs still have Jimmer Fredette, but Davies was their leading rebounder, and he was also Fredette's main target down low. Losing a guy like that is highly detrimental to a team who had hopes of not only a number 1 seed, but of a Final Four appearance as well. It seems now that those dreams might be a little far-fetched. But what I find even more far-fetched is BYU's so-called honor code. Have y'all seen this thing? It's pretty outdated. Now, I'm not trying to knock anyone's religious views, but this is a little much. It says, and I quote, "All students and residents are required to conduct themselves in a manner consistent with the honor code. Students must abstain from the use of alcohol, tobacco, sexual misconduct, and gambling activities. Men are expected to be clean-shaven, beards are not acceptable. Clothing is considered inappropriate when it is sleeveless, revealing, or form-fitting. Violators of the honor code may result in actions up to and including separation from the university." End quote. Now, is it just me, or did anybody else read that the basketball team is in violation because they don't have sleeves, the football team's in violation because their uniforms are form-fitting, and that anyone who is over the age of 21 is in violation when they have a sip of alcohol? Now, I understand it's a religious university and that they're trying to keep their kids pure, but it's something that is very tough to deal with as a college student in this day and age. I feel for Davies, but then again, he grew up in Provo and he knew what he was getting himself into when he signed with BYU. I just hope for the tournament's sake that they allow him back on the team. But props to BYU for sticking with their guns and not giving special treatment to athletes. Moving on to another controversial topic, Cincinnati quarterback Carson Palmer has said that he will either retire if the Bengals do not trade or release him. Now, a move of what he's doing is a move similar to what Ocho Cinco tried to pull back just a few years ago. Now, here's what I don't understand. Ocho Cinco caught a ton of flack for wanting to get out of Cincy. In fact, way more than I thought he deserved. But now a pretty boy quarterback pulls the same move and nobody gives him any grief. Well, here you go, Carson. What have you done? Nothing. How many Super Bowl or MVPs have you won? None. You've been to 2 Pro Bowls while Chad has been to 6 in just as many years. You have no stock to say that you'll retire if you don't get traded. But then again, I guess he kind of technically does. A source close to Palmer has come out to say that Palmer has about $80 million in the bank. 80 mil? Hey man, if I take my comments back, will you share the wealth? In other NFL news, it's been reported that the owner set aside $4 billion from TV network negotiations and what the players claim to be in preparation for a lockout. Now, they filed it with the court, and Judge David Doty actually ruled in the player union's favor. Many of the players feel that this is huge for them because it takes much of the power away from the owners. We'll see how all of this plays out, but I am truly hoping it puts the pressure back on the owners to reach in a CBA agreement. Because honestly, I don't think I can last a year without the NFL. But good news though, is that they were able to agree to extend the deadline for another 24 hours, and they recently just agreed to extend it for another 7 days. So people, pray with me for football. Now, switching subjects, let's talk about my favorite game ever, fantasy baseball. I love fantasy baseball, and folks, it's just around the corner. With opening day at the very end of this month, many leagues are starting up and getting their drafts already going. Now, I know that I've drafted in one of my leagues, and in my other, my draft is in a week from today. For those of you who do play fantasy baseball, there have been some big moves this past offseason that are really going to affect fantasy. So my suggestion is to go out there and research as much as you can, and then get yourself ready for a long 162-game season. Well, when we come back, we're going to be joined by Aaron and Carl for our new rapid fire segment. You won't want to miss it. We'll be right back.